Dr. Scallon, can you move Chair Lentz over?
I did, and she
Oh,
declined it.
oh, interesting.
I will
Okay.
try it again just to see if that was by accident.
Okay, thanks.
She did accept it this time, so
Okay, great, thank you. We just lost board member Ali.
I didn't mean to decline you. I thought it was the audio button. I'm
No.
sorry.
We Ali was just with us and then we lost him. So we'll wait for him to get back and then we'll get the meeting started there. He's connecting. Great.
And Maya, I didn't get to actually send you the email, but I can go either way on BEDH, talking about it tonight, or if you want to wait until the next meeting, that's fine too.
Okay. Is he connected? Yeah, great. Okay. I would like to call the Policy Committee of the Portland Board of Public Education to order. It is Monday, November 24th. We are meeting in an online format. My name is Maya Lena. I am the chair of the Policy Committee. Tonight we have with us Vice Chair of the Board and District 1 Representative Mickey Bondo, District 2 Representative Ali, Board Chair Sarah Lentz, and Superintendent Dr. Ryan Scallon. Tonight we have a few things on our agenda. We're going to be going over some policies that we have already discussed. BEDH, which is public participation at board meetings. We're hoping to have a vote on it. I think we'll check in with Chair Lenz about some edits that we have had from the lawyers, and we can discuss as a committee if we are ready to vote on it. Another policy, JHB, which is about truancy. We are hoping to have a discussion and vote on that one. We're going to have a discussion on policy GBEB, which is about staff conduct with students. And then finally, we'll have a presentation from Dr. Scallon about policy IIB, which is not a policy we currently have, which is about class size. Before we get into that, I am going to see if there's anyone who would like to give public comment. If you would, please raise your Zoom hand. Okay, I see we do have someone ready to give public comment. Emily, I see you. I'm gonna go ahead and read the public comment rules policy before we call you over. Let me pull that up. Oh dear, I don't have that in front of me. Sorry, just one second. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the schools, except for personnel matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which shall be addressed either through established policies and procedures. If an item is on the agenda, please use the public comment time associated with that item. Comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes or 6 minutes for individuals using an interpreter to make their comment. Individuals may not relinquish a portion of their allotted time to another speaker. The board may not respond to comments, and please refrain from responding in the audience. Speakers must refrain from engaging in disruptive conduct, including but not limited to using vulgar and/or obscene language, threatening others using words by other actions, using pejorative or discriminatory language with reference to a person or group on the basis of their religion, ethnicity, nationality, race, color, descent, gender, or other identity factor, making defamatory comments, exceeding the allotted time limits, talking over or interrupting others, offering repetitive comments, and offering comment on matters unrelated to the school district's programs, policies, and operations. I will stop any public comment that is contrary to these rules. To give public comment, please raise your Zoom hand, and please begin by introducing yourself with your name and address. We will alternate. Oh, we're not alternating, we're all on Zoom. I will keep the time and I will raise my hand indicating that you have 30 seconds remaining, and I will announce when it's the end of your time. I don't have any colored folders in front of me today. Um, If you are at the end of your allotted time and would like to request more time, you may do so. Okay, so if we can make sure that Emily can share, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name's Emily Liebling. I live in the Reiki neighborhood. I'm the parent of a current fourth grader at Reiki and a King middle schooler. I've been teaching in the district for 14 years. I'm also one of our building union reps. So I'm wearing a lot of hats, and part of the reason I wanted to come tonight is to talk about a potential policy I know you're thinking about for class sizes. Um, Superintendent Scallon came to our PTO meeting last week. I think it was last week, maybe it was 2 weeks ago. And we were wondering what the best way would be to advocate for smaller class sizes at Reiki specifically. And he recommended coming to this committee meeting. I mean, this is a very personal issue for me as a parent. I hear about this fourth grade cohort that he is a part of. And I know that I'm not sure, I'll start at the beginning because I'm not sure how familiar people are with the history of this group in particular, but we had four third grade classes. And then as kids were entering into the fourth grade, the numbers were just so close to, I can't even remember the cutoff offhand, but it was really close to the cutoff of us either having four fourth grade classes for the following year, which is this current year, or three classes. And I think if what I heard we were maybe just one student away from being able to hire a fourth grade teacher. But because we didn't meet that threshold this year, we've had three fourth grade classes. The classes are really big. I think there's 25, 24 kids in some of the classes. They're also really small classrooms. We now have walls at Reiki, which is amazing. But these are really big bodies and very small rooms now. And what I hear from my son is that it is often very loud. It's really hard to focus on work. He sees kids being really disrespectful to his teachers. He adores his teacher. And it's hard to watch kids being very disrespectful on a frequent basis. And then learning is often interrupted in his classroom. Um, Sorry, I meant to start my own timer. Do you happen to know how long I've been talking?
You have 35 seconds left, Emily.
Okay, I'll be quick. I'm just advocating for a more nuanced and data-driven policy for class sizes that would take into account some of the barriers that we know our students face, including learning a language, English language learning, ESOL numbers, social emotional needs, trauma, behavior. We have a lot of data from Swiss to show certain cohorts do have a harder time and need more support. Numbers of students, the IEPs. So, I mean, I don't have particular data points, but I just would advocate for. Oh, sorry, there was one more thing I was going to say is I got the letter today from the school board talking about equity, and it just seemed to connect so beautifully with the goals of strengthening instruction for multilingual learners and expanding access to challenging coursework, and also improving systems of hiring, onboarding, and retention. I know retention for teachers is just so hard right now. And for those fourth grade teachers and the staff who support that cohort, they are burning out so fast. So supporting them to feel more successful in their jobs and supporting students to really enjoy being in school are so connected. Thank
Thank
you
you,
for your
Emily.
time.
Thanks so much. Casey Donahue?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Um, so I'm a colleague of Emily's. My name's Casey Donahue. I'm a fourth grade teacher at Reiki, and I live in the Reiki neighborhood. I've got 23 students in my class. It was 24 in my fourth grade class until last week, and given the transiency um at Reiki, it's relatively high levels. I imagine that I'll be oscillating between 22 and 25 in my classroom all year. And I wanted to give just a kind of a picture of how my room works. So it is relatively small, as Emily said, but it's also horizontally configured. And that means that if if we look at it like a train car, the TV teaching screen would be on the broad side of the train car, which doesn't give me a lot of depth to squeeze my 23, 24 students during a teacher-led lesson. Of course, I don't love to always do teacher-led lessons. The most effective way that I can help my students is often rug-driven lessons, and my students cannot fit on my rug. They cannot all physically be on the rug or even on the edges of it with small carpet squares that our school has available to us. And it's a sizable rug. I raise a lot of money on donors choose for it. So these are students who, as kindergarteners during COVID, they had to maintain a certain masked social distance, and they missed out on key interpersonal skill building. And we're trying to catch that back up. And they're moving from a third grade with 4 teachers and about 17 to 16, 17, 18 per class to a 24 per class setting. And I'm not able to implement seated circle lessons, which are embedded in our district's own math, SEL, and EL lessons. So as Emily alluded to, we're facing a year with staggering behavior challenges. And a lot of this is exacerbated by what I would kind of describe as a cohort of students who can and do thrive under smaller teaching environments, but are being dragged away by large disruptions in the room, whether it's the congestedness, whether it's students who require much greater attention, whether it's students who are waiting on BHPs that we've applied to months ago and they still aren't there. And in August, we found out that there would only be 3 fourth grade teachers. And by the first day of school, it looked like each class was set to receive 24. And I understand that this was just under the cap. And I also understand that everything I'm saying is anecdotal. So I understand on paper the decision to not provide Reiki with a 4th teacher. But what I'd like to see in this discussion is an answer to this question of what do we mean when we talk about being like a data-driven decision-making district? I looking to see that we don't have
Time,
more than
Casey.
25. All right.
Would you like 30 more seconds?
I would love 30 more
Go
seconds.
ahead.
Just seeing whether we make the cap or not. That's not data-driven. That's just a head count. And if you look at our stats, you'll see that Reiki has 65% ML students, that we have 50% of our students are not just ML, but IELD learners. These kids require and need and deserve a smaller learning environment. We look at 83% of our students with reduced lunches, bringing certain levels of struggle and mental load burdens already into the classroom. And we care for them and we're trying to meet them. But we want to see a data-driven perspective that's student first. We want to give our teachers a chance to care about the kids that we already do care about and show that care through our education with smaller class sizes. Thanks.
Thank you so much. That was perfect timing. Anyone else like to give a comment? Please raise your Zoom hand. Okay. Oh, Annie.
Hi, this is Annie Dalpin. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. I am one of the lead teachers at Reiki School, and I'm proud of some teachers from Reiki coming and speaking up. I just wanted to reiterate what they were saying and also ask the board to think about when they're thinking about this policy, to think about not just Reiki, but the other schools in the district that have high levels of free and reduced lunch and have high levels of ML students and high levels of McKinney-Vento students. And I think about how great it is this year that in our kindergartens, we have 2 literacy ed techs who are supporting literacy instruction in the kindergarten. And I know that that didn't happen for every school, that was a consideration that we made for the school board made for schools like Reiki. And I hope that that kind of nuanced thinking can be something that we talk about when lead teachers and social workers and the people on the staff that know the students, if that can be part of the conversation about class sizes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Annie. I don't see any other attendees in the room. So I'm going to go ahead and close public comment, and then we can get started on our agenda. So the first item of business is policy BEDH, public participation at board meetings. And again, the hope is a discussion and a vote. So we're just gonna have Superintendent Scallon pull that up in a moment.
You want me to pull up the Redline version?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. I'm a visitor here tonight, so I'm learning how you guys do your work on the policy
Oh yeah,
committee.
and I should mention that board member Yusra Ali joined us, and also Superintendent Scallon is with us tonight because he's giving us the presentation on class size, and also Dr. Warren is not with us tonight because she is presenting with the finance operations and personnel committee, which is meeting at the same time. Okay. So I'll just give a brief update here. Dr. Warren shared this document with us. This has the proposed edits. There are some comments in the margins from the lawyers, but largely I don't think anything has changed since the last time that we spoke. The one thing that we were discussing last time is whether or not to only have public comment at the beginning of the meeting or also to take public comment during the meeting on agenda items, specifically, after an item has come up on the agenda. Chair Lentz, is there anything you would like to add right now?
I there was a really great article in the Portland Press Herald about a week ago about the different cases across Maine of where there have been First Amendment challenges at school boards, and how school boards are becoming kind of like targeted for this kind of case. And so I will email that to everybody so they have access to it. But I think that was really the impetus, is making sure that this policy and the way that we enforce it at our meetings continues to allow for public comment, because we want to do that. Like, there's full board support on that. We don't want to restrain anyone, but we want to be really clear on how we are upholding the First Amendment. And I think that there are things in the current policy that could potentially, stand in the way. And I think we could just make some shifts around that. I feel like personally, I don't care one way or the other if we do one public comment or two sets. Like, I could go either way on that. That is less important to me than some of the language shifts that are being suggested here to make changes on.
Is there anyone else on the committee that would like to share anything about this policy?
Yeah, I would kind of like it to be shared in detail, and what's being changed and why it's being changed in specific detail. Because last time I didn't fully understand. There's certain parts that were being, I guess changed, and I was kind of complete disagreement, 100% complete disagreement. So has this changed from the last request? And yeah, that.
So I don't believe it has changed. I know that there are more comments from the lawyers, and I had sent an email to Dr. Warren earlier saying, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to pass this without her present tonight, just because were some questions that the lawyers were asking, or suggestions they were making here and there. I don't know that we'll necessarily be able to have as robust of a discussion. And then Board Chair Lenz, before we got started, you said that you would be okay with us pushing this to next meeting. Ali, did you want to say something?
No, I can mute. My bad.
Okay. Um, is there anyone who feels strongly that they want to discuss this and review it and vote on it tonight?
Yeah, I don't think so too, because when I read some of the comment from Melissa, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was not really quite sure what we changing here from the previous one. So it kind of a little confusing for me. I think Dr. Warren, because she's the one discussed it with the attorney, I think for her be on the stage, gonna be much better to answer those questions. So,
Yeah.
I feel like, in my opinion, then we have to move for the next meeting.
Okay. Chair Lenz, do we need to like have a voter consensus to be able to do that or just table it? We do. Okay.
Yeah, you could just make a motion to table to the next meeting and
Okay.
then move that forward.
Great. Okay.
Chair,
Yes.
Lena, I have a quick question before you do
Mhm.
that. I think that the legal questions that are in the margins are truly questions to the board versus questions of legal weight where they're saying, no, you can't do this. I think they're questions to the board. So, for example, the first question is if you want to have there be two public comment sections, here's one way to do it. But I think their general recommendation is actually to do one, but and that's because of the legal requirement to have one, but it's board discretion. In terms of the second question, I think they're just trying to clarify that you can't have a discussion of any personnel matter. It doesn't matter if it's about a specific employee or general. And that personnel/student matter is the same. So I think they're trying to like just clarify that. In the third one, they're just saying that if the board wants, the board can put in a time limit for the total length of public comment. Not that's not a legal question. That's a whatever you guys choose. You guys, right now, we don't have a limit.
That's saying like if 5 people or 35 people show up for public comment, we're limiting public comment to an hour, we're limiting public comment to 2 hours.
Yes.
Okay.
Comment, and I'm not suggesting it right now. It's actually blank. So it's not actually making a proposal here. It's a question to the committee. That here it's simply saying that we either should say that public comment is allowed at committee or public comment is not, but not to have the chair choose. And then here, they're making a legal argument that saying that you can't use pejorative or discriminatory language could be a violation of the First Amendment. At the same time, the board could say that that's a policy that we're going to take the risk of and still have. That is where, right? These are not legal pieces. And so I think the one thing is I don't have any concern about like postponing it. I think the question that would be helpful to know from the committee is what are the specific outstanding questions that we need more information on so that we can make sure that Melissa or Sarah are prepared with exactly that information for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you so much, Superintendent. That's very helpful. So if everyone was able to follow along with that, are there any points that the superintendent just went over that you have further comment on? I can take notes here, and get that to Dr. Warren. Yes, Ali.
I just want to say that this consistent thing that's happening with the lawyers and how they're particularly looking into, when it's called discriminative language and race, it's starting to get annoying. And I would like them to watch this and whatever. And at this point, I'm getting to a point where it's like the First Amendment is enforced. We have our own rights to create the policy that we choose, and to say that something is discriminative based on these specific things or more, right? I just don't see how that correlates to the First Amendment, period. I could be I could have a store or an organization or whatever, and I could be like, if you are this, then you got to leave. I don't like that. But this is policies basing literally just because like I just don't understand how they're going to correlate that, and they're making me question their ethics and their morals, period, because this is the first time, and so I'm just not doing it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna 100% push back on that, and I'm gonna keep that piece, knowing that we changed it off the um, uh, uh, um, uh, equity policy.
Thanks.
Can I
I'm
just
making note of that. Yep,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I really totally agree with Broad Ali, because that's why I had impression when I was reading it is that we try all the time with those different policies to try to avoid everything about discriminatory. So, and I think if really want to pay a little more attention, can we have the cleanup first to remove all the red, and so we have the clear language, and then I can be able to compare with the previous one. But I really want to see what we want to avoid to be reflecting on the discrimination as well, because we saw that in a couple of years with a lot of reaction around the public comments. Then I think that policy was made in regard for that. So I'm totally in favor what both Ali just mentioned, and I think I'm gonna push back as well. So the language should be stay the way we feel like we have the authority to build a policy where we feel like discriminatory and race should be also mentioned about it. Thank you.
So I just want to make sure this part that's in front of us, Board Member Ali and Vice Chair Bondo, that says B, and then the section that's highlighted, you would be in favor of keeping that in place and not editing it.
Yes.
Okay, great. I'll make a note of that. Thank you.
Thank
The
you.
commentary, who wrote the commentary? Was that the lawyers
The
or?
lawyers, yes, the lawyers.
So I'm gonna take this document and actually ask the ACLU about like this specific thing and see if it does violate the First Amendment. Because I just don't understand. Thank you.
Okay. Were there any other points that the questions that Superintendent Scallon was asking as we were going through them that made you have a question or needing a clarification for our next time when we decide we are going to have the cleaned up version and vote on it?
I'm good with your explanation from the superintendent. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Superintendent, for doing that. That was very helpful. I do think that it would be appropriate to, I'll do all the motions, but to table it and have the cleaned up version and have that in front of us and ready to vote on it because it is very hard to read all of this. And just to follow up with Dr. Warren about those last points. So I would like to make a motion to table the edits on policy BEDH until our next meeting. Is there a second? Board Member Ali, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee on the motion? Okay, is there any public comment on this motion? I do see that one of our attendees, Casey Donahue, has a hand up, but I think that's been up since before. Thank you. Great. Okay, so there's no public comment. And is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, then by roll call vote, please indicate whether you are in favor of tabling the decision to vote on policy BEDH until next meeting. Board Member Ali.
Yep.
Board Member Yusra Ali.
Yes.
Vice Chair Bondo.
Yes.
And I am a yes, so this motion passes. We are going to table BEDH until next meeting. The next item on our agenda is JHB Truancy. And the update on that one, as we're waiting for that to be pulled up, is there last time we had a discussion about the word parents versus guardians and whether it was necessary to have, one or the other because it was inconsistent throughout the document. And the lawyer said that was essentially an oversight. And so it's been updated to say parent/guardian in all of those spots. Um, Otherwise, yeah, there we go. Parents slash legal guardians. Yep. So that was added back in. So I don't know, is there anyone that has anything they want to share about policy JHP? Okay. Then I would like to make a motion to approve the edits to policy JHB as provided before us. Is there a second? Board Member Yusra Ali, is that a second or is it a
It's a
question?
second.
Okay, great, thank you. Are there any questions from the committee on the motion? Is there any public comment? Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, then by roll call vote, please indicate whether you are in favor of passing policy JHB onto the full school board as presented before us. Board Member Ali Ali,
Yes.
Board Member Yusra Ali,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mickey Mondo,
Yes.
and I'm yes, so the motion passes. I'm just gonna make a note of this. Okay, great. So the next item on our agenda is a discussion on policy GBEB, staff conduct with students. Superintendent, do you have the Redlines policy that's on diligent that you could share? Great. This one, while he's pulling it up, Dr. Warren and I did go through and we made some changes. Could you show it without the comments, possibly? Or share the one that's posted to diligent? That would be helpful. Thank you. So we went through, there was quite a bit of feedback from staff and feedback from this committee. And so we went through and made edits based on our previous discussion. I'll point out certain things that were helpful. I mean, I'll just read through them. So under prohibited conduct, the first bullet, we changed the wording to any type of sexual or uninvited or unwelcome physical contact with students. The next line, singling out a particular student or students for personal attention, positive or negative, or friendship. So we thought that the part was vague where it said beyond the normal teacher-student relationship, like that, how do you define what a normal student-teacher relationship is? If you go down a few bullets, this was the one about pet names. That was, a big discussion. We went back and forth on that one. So that's been changed to addressing students in an overly familiar manner or in a manner that demonstrates favoritism. The next was about first names or nicknames. The discussion there was that would not be appropriate for Portland to not allow that. There are so many staff members that do go by first name, especially in the elementary school. So that's been updated to permitting one student or only some students to address you by a nickname or a nickname in an overly familiar manner. So that is more specific, where you're only allowing one student or a small number of students to do that. It's not sort of the common practice. Everything else has stayed the same in that section. There was a piece added. The header says, before engaging in the following activities, staff members are expected to review the activity with their building administrator or supervisor in advance. And this one, I'm not sure why there aren't red lines here, but we thought that the first bullet where it says being alone with individual students out of public view, that one came under this because we were talking about the role of maybe a school counselor or a social worker, that often that does happen where students are one-on-one and it is necessary for privacy reasons. but that the building administrator, that's part of the job description. That's something that's been cleared by the building administrator to do that. But the bullet says being alone with students out of public view. So that would be, something that would need to be cleared by a supervising person. So if a staff person didn't have previous permission, if it was not part of their typical role, they would need to check with their administrator and say, hey, I need to have a one-on-one meeting with so and so. It's going to happen in my classroom at this time. So someone else knows what's going on. Similar with driving students to other locations, inviting or allowing students to visit the staff member's home, except for under the parent guardian approval. I don't need to read through all of these. There isn't a change under exchanging personal gifts beyond customary student teacher gifts. This includes gifts of food, clothing, or other necessities. And then there are some edits down below under reporting, adding in human resources and the building administrator or the superintendent. So it's not necessarily reporting directly to the superintendent in a case of a suspected violation. And I'm not sure why that last part was deleted, but anyway, those are the changes that are before us. Does anyone in the committee have any thoughts or questions about the updates? Yes, board member Yusra.
I think I'd really appreciate there is a little bit more clarity now compared to last time in the discussions we were having, specifically making sure that there's no favoritism going on, even the way that students are allowed to interact. Some students are allowed to interact with teachers that they might know or neighbors with, etc. And also, I like the part that a building administrator will be informed if a student and a teacher or coach, whatever the position might be, that they have to have a one-on-one meeting. I'm in favor of this because it gives a little bit more clarity and yeah.
Thank you. I mean, the point of this policy is to be as clear as possible, so it's not confusing and it's not murky or muddy for anyone. They know what they're supposed to do, and it'll be clear if someone is violating. So that's the goal. So if there's anything here that seems unclear, this would be a time to speak up. Again, we're not voting on this tonight, just having more of a discussion. So any feedback is welcome. Okay. So the intention would be at our next meeting to vote on this. So this is really the last time to give any feedback. I don't think anyone has any. So we don't have to do anything at this point on this policy. And I believe the last thing on our agenda is Superintendent Scallon's presentation on class sizes. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm just going to give a tiny bit of background while you're doing that for those that are tuning in tonight. So, policy IIB is a policy that would pertain to class size. Portland currently does not have policy IIB. The other policies we were discussing tonight are ones that we do have and we're updating. Actually, the one we just talked about is one we don't have, GBEB, where that's a new one that we've created. So it'd be kind of a similar process where we're looking at model policies or looking at examples and data to try to create one that is appropriate for Portland. So just with GBEB, we looked at a model policy. We said, this won't work for Portland. This won't work for Portland. Oh, this will work for Portland. So that's the process we're going through.
Thank you for that, Chair. Presentation is probably too strong a word. Today, I really wanted to orient you to a number of tools that we are sharing and to get your feedback on exactly what questions would be helpful. The reality is that a policy around class size certainly sits within the discretion of the board. And there's outside research that sits outside of Portland that talks about where there's value in class size changes. And as you heard tonight from three of our Reiki staff, um, there are also unique circumstances that exist that can impact how what the sort of load is that sits on a teacher. And I had a great conversation with the Reiki PTO and some staff there a week or two ago that really talked about not just class size, but also other factors that go in. And one of the things that I've shared with them, but I've shared with, I think, you at different times, is, I worked in Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, um, cities that are more diverse in total than Portland. But when you walk into an individual classroom in Portland, you will see more diversity within a single classroom than you would see in those districts. And you see that because those districts, by neighborhood, by program, become more segregated. And so our Portland teachers are asked to work with a full continuum of students within their individual classroom, both in terms of language development as well as socioeconomic. And so it's both what makes our district rich and asks our teachers to balance a lot of different needs within a single classroom. And so all factors to be taken into consideration. So we put together three things to just orient you to where we are in Portland Public Schools around class size. And so I'm going to take some time to just orient you to these, answer questions, and then get from you what information would be helpful. So this first one is available on board docs. And it's looking at our mainland elementary schools. And it's done just for illustrative purposes. And so let me orient you to it, and then I'll walk you through each of the different areas. So on the top up here, is that big enough for people to see? You want me to make it a little bigger? I can't
Yes,
tell because you
please.
the bullet. A little bigger?
Yep.
Yeah, a little bigger would be
Great.
helpful.
How's that?
I think that's fine.
Okay, perfect. Maggie just adjusted her glasses, so she's ready. So up at the top, what you can see is enrollment, the number of students that are identified as socioeconomically disadvantaged, multilingual, or having an IEP. This is all based on our October 1 count this year. So that's what you see at the top. And then down below, you see where we took basically our budget. And we said, how many staff do we provide to each school? And so East End has one principal, one assistant principal. That's the way to read this. And then what does that mean for a student to adult ratio within that category based on overall enrollment, based on number of students that are socioeconomically disadvantaged, multilingual, or have an IEP? Down here, where you see the color coding, it is not designed to mean red is bad and green is good, but it's showing you the continuum. So every row you look at will have a green and they'll have a red. And so it's trying to show you who has a higher ratio and who has a lower ratio. And it doing that a little bit to illustrate how our current process of doing the budget, where we assign based on overall enrollment and based on a building, can have some impact on these ratios. And so if you look here, right, just to again orient you, we have principal, assistant principal, and teacher leader within this category. And so East End has assistant principal and a principal, so 2 leaders, 375 students. So they have 187 kids for every leader in the building. That is on the higher end. Row is actually the highest at 234. And Presumpscot is the lowest at 122 kids per leader.
It looks like Lyseth is a little higher than Rome.
Oh, you're right. Yep. A smidge there. Yep. I was going by color real quick. Doesn't always work. And so that's what you see here. If you then just said, all right, how does it look for socioeconomic? You can see again that Longfellow has a ratio of 25 kids that are identified as socioeconomically disadvantaged to each leader. They have 8.5 multilingual learners and 29 students with IEPs. And so when I look at this, right, this is like a heat map that tells us overall how is staffing working. And you can see that there's 3 schools on this that come in like pretty like high and some schools that come in pretty low. So East End, Rowe, and Talbot all come in pretty high. And Longfellow, Ocean, and Presumpscot come in on the better ratio side. We then have secondary leaders, so instructional coach, culture and climate coordinator, and SPED coordinator. And I'm doing the same exercise here. And so here, whereas Presumpscot was high, like positively before, had a low ratio, here they come in pretty high. And they do that because they have a half a culture coordinator and a half a SPED coordinator. Whereas Longfellow comes in mixed, Reiki mixed, and so you can start to see how this varies. And so if I just scroll down, math and reading interventionists, so who's providing support. We added one at Reiki and one at East End this year. You can see that that had a positive impact on their overall ratio. Still had some work to do around socioeconomically disadvantaged and multilingual. Under
Ryan,
social,
can I ask a quick question? I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Where your arrow is right now at 500. What is that number at Longfellow?
It's because they have only half a reading interventionist,
Oh,
because
I
they have
see.
half a reading interventionist, half an ESOL teacher. And so it's doubling their enrollment.
I see. Thank
Is what's happening. For social workers and guidance counselors, we looked at what I'm going to call generalists. We didn't count those for the Breathe program. Teachers, where this really becomes, I think, a lot of what Reiki staff were talking about tonight. So on the teacher side, the way that we do it right now, based on sort of historical practice within the district, is we have class size guidelines that say 20 students in kindergarten, 22 students in first, second, and third grade, 25 students in fourth and fifth. And so you take the total number of kindergartners, divide by 20, and that tells you how many teachers are going to be there. And so here we just looked at their core classroom teachers because the others are assigned based on specific need. And you can see that Reiki is one of the highest, not quite the highest, Rowe's a little bit higher on overall class size. But then when you add in factors like socioeconomically disadvantaged and the number of students that are multilingual, right, they're right across the board. And so it's almost like it's a multiplicative effect in terms of need within the classroom. You could have the same conversation over at East End, where they're a little bit lower, right? A little more than one student lower on average. But then again, you factor in socioeconomic, multilingual, and special ed. And there's more need within that classroom. And then you can see that what we've known all along and what we really need to sort of wrestle with in this policy is that anything where it just changes the overall cut for class size in terms of the cap particularly benefits smaller schools. And it benefits smaller schools because they're more likely, just based on how our enrollment works, to be 1 or 2 students over. And if you just picture a scenario where you're a school with two kindergarten classrooms, if you're at 39 kids, you have a classroom of basically 20 and 19. And then if you go to 41 kids, you become 3 classrooms. And you become 3 classrooms of, what is that, 14? And so that little bit, that one student makes such a difference. On the flip side, you go to a larger school, right? Those students become more dispersed. And so it doesn't have as big an impact on class size. And so looking at these other factors are helpful. It's also worth just noting that we do have other layers that just serve as a complicating factor. So while we are talking about special education students, we also add in resource room teachers based on the number of special education students in a school. And so it, in theory, helps lower the ratio. And the same thing with ESOL, right? So what we were talking about Reiki earlier, right, and how it's red kind of across the board here, you look down here and on their multilingual ratio, they're better. But oftentimes those services, depending on the student level, will happen in the classroom or outside the classroom. So it may not have the direct impact on class size during core instruction. So this is one tool. And really, like, if you look at it, right, this is like an exercise that I was doing when we were putting this together to understand what this looks like from our equity policy, is if you just zoom out, right? So you can't read it, but you can look at color. And you see that there are certain schools that are typically green and benefit, and there are schools that are typically red and don't benefit. And this screams to me around the equity policy and then how our work happens with this class size proposal, about how we think about this so that a school is not red all the way across or all the way down, as we see here in some cases. So that's tool one that we've provided. I want to share tool two. Sorry, the Zoom thing got in the way. There we go. So tool two allows you to see how changing, if you just changed class size maximums, what it does over here is C is current, P is proposed. So what it's doing is it's again looking at October 1 enrollment. So it's a little bit different than what they would see in their classroom because it's factoring in how many kids are actually there on October, not any adjustment, but what's current and what would be proposed for each grade. And then it will show you here what it means from an additional teacher end and the approximate cost. And so if we were to change kindergarten from 20 to 15, for folks who are watching at home, there's no particular reason I picked 15. I just wanted to pick a number for illustration. It can show you that based on current enrollment, not factoring in anything else, that would add 11 teachers or $1.1 million. And it can show you here what it would do to class size. On average, it would lower row by 3.5. It would lower East End by just over 3. It would lower Talbot by 4.5. It would lower Lyseth by 6. Reiki by 3. Longfellow, this is where I'm talking about the small school versus large. Longfellow would drop by 7. Ocean by 4. Presumscott by 5, a little over 5.5. So again, like the benefit really sits in small schools, as you can see here. And so this is the second tool. There's a piece here that we would need to nerd out on a little bit, but this is looking at basically the ratio of teachers per planning period. So it's saying that for every core elementary school teacher, you need 2/10 of a teacher for a special. Think about that's their planning period. The way our schedule currently works in middle school is it's almost a half a teacher that you need. And you can see how there's a little bit of difference at the high schools depending on their schedule and how it works out. So that's what you can see here. And this is a tool, again, just designed, and you can change any of the, what are we going to call that? Tan colored boxes to see what the impact is. And then the third piece, because I think it will actually help really illustrate this piece, is the third thing that was shared is a folder. And what the folder has is it has current class sizes or enrollment by teacher and by section in Infinite Campus. And so there's obviously some context to this before I show it to you all, which is that in elementary school, most teachers are generalists. They just teach, they don't just teach, but they teach third grade. In middle school, you start to get to subjects. So a teacher is licensed in math. And in high school, you get the same licensure piece. And then oftentimes you have very specific classes based on student interest. And so you don't just have science, 10th grade science, but you have psychology, you have chemistry, physics, AP physics. You have like that range. And so it isn't exactly a one-to-one in terms of how class size works. But what we actually see is that our overall class size is higher in fifth grade than at any other point, fourth or fifth grade, than at any other point in a student's time in Portland Public Schools. And so, Chair Lena, can you tell me a elementary school that we could look at real quick?
Lyseth.
Great. So what this will show you, they have that, they have theirs actually broken out so by subject and not just the teacher. But you can see class sizes of 20, 18, 20, sort of across the board.
We could look at, Reiki fourth grade.
Let's look at Reiki fourth grade. Let's see how it looks here. Oh, they have it broken out too. Weird. This changed since they updated the folder. But let's look at fourth grade. Let's see if we can find it here. Great. Let's just look at math fourth grade. 22, 22, 24. Right? You see science, same thing. All of them are probably going to be the exact same. Health, etc. So 2 classes of 22 and a class of 24 when this was pulled on November 6th. So now let's pull a middle school. So Chair Lena.
Lincoln.
Lincoln. Great. Where do we see?
I see it. It's the third one down from now. It's like the fifth one down. LMS section summary.
Thank you.
There you go. Yep.
And now this is 7th grade math, right? So we were just looking at 4th grade math. This is 7th grade math. 12, 11, 12, 17, 12, 11, 18, and 10. Sometimes that difference of 17 and 18 is like very school specific context, right? So I can't tell you exactly why it's that, but that gives you a sense of how many students are in the math class. So a pretty significant difference.
I see some larger-ish numbers in the English language arts. I mean, so there's still quite a few small ones, but there are some larger, 20.
Yeah, you can definitely see it. And science is one where, in particular, right, they have one fewer science teacher. So you see 20, 21, right, 14, 18, 16, 19. I think that's driven a little bit by having an odd number of sections and doing some balancing. Language arts, right? You do see the 20, the 19 in 6th grade. Then you see 7th grade there. And this is not, please don't read this and say this is throwing any sort of shade towards our middle school. It's not that at all. Right? I was a middle school teacher at one point. Whew. I have a middle school kid. There is nothing harder in my mind than being a middle school teacher. But I wanted to share this with the committee so that as they were thinking about class size and differences, this is like one of those spaces where there's trade-offs that the district makes in terms of priority and where we spend our money. And then let's just do a high school real quick. Oh, go ahead, Chair Lentz.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could maybe say a couple of sentences on how like the middle school model of how we like set up classes is impacting this, because I still feel like I'm not totally clear on that, and I would guess other people here aren't aware of it either.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of factors that are there. So one is, let's just take Lincoln because we were just looking at it. Or let's say King. King used to have around 500, a little over 500 students, and now is right around 440, 450. Moore is growing actually a little bit over the last 10 years, and Lincoln used to have 500 students and is now at about 340. Okay, so that's one factor that drives this. They did reduce teachers some in the budget 2 years ago, but not at the same ratio as sort of students who are no longer there. So that's one factor. The second factor is there's a lot of research that says that a team of teachers knowing the students really well and working together drive better outcomes for students. And so in our middle schools, there's a teaming model structure. And so if you imagine at Lincoln, they have teams of either 3 or 4 teachers. They may count their related arts in there, et cetera, but when it comes to core teachers, it's either 3 or 4. And those 3 or 4 teachers see all of the same kids. And so because of that teaming structure, we don't do it as efficiently as you could see maybe in the high school, right? So in the high school, you can say, all right, we're going to have kids just go to whichever English teacher is available. In our middle school, if you're in Moosehead at King, you are going to a specific English teacher. And you're going to a specific math teacher and a specific social studies teacher and a specific science teacher. And so that doesn't allow for you to do the schedule as efficiently as you could otherwise do it, because you're choosing to have more teachers than you would necessarily need to have. Or the other piece is you could choose to really put those teams up at the max, but are so like you could choose to have every class be at 25, let's say. I'm not arguing that, but let's just like say that. But we don't. We sort of evenly split them between 2 teams in each grade. And so that's what's the factor here. So there's a number of things that play out to this that are like trade-offs that, again, for Chair Lena, who's taught middle school, myself, there's some challenges that come, right? And like really getting to know your kids and providing the structure and the support and having that teaming where you can talk. And that's an investment that the district makes to have that structure in place. I'm just going to pull up Deering High School because it's right here, just to give you a sense of high school. And so I'm just going to scroll down. High school, it's interesting. You see a range. You see some classes that are pretty full, right? Where student demand and interest in that class pushes it up. And then you'll see some classes that are much, much smaller. This is for English language learners, so let's move on a little bit past it. But like if you look here, Arabic, a class we want to support having in our schools. But that desire to like do that, in Portland, we offer Latin. Can sometimes result in lower class sizes than you would see other spots. Oftentimes the core classes are pretty full. English 4 is an example. But if I go down here to where there's more choice, like in science, let's just see if I can get to science here. You'll see some differences, like engineering, 2, 5, 3, varies a little. I somehow scrolled past science in my example.
Dr.
We,
Ryan, I see some, I'm sorry, I see some number 30. Those are the like a digital, so they have a crowd students.
so let's look at a place where you see 30. Let me just find one here. Board member Bondo.
Oh, that's my glasses.
I haven't come across one yet, but that's not to say that there isn't.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a couple. One was like out of district special ed, and then another one looked like a lab, some sort of lab. They were both at 32.
I mean, one's a placeholder for out of district students that we need to keep on IC, Infinite Campus, for enrollment purposes. Here, advisory. So this advisory has 28. I don't know if there's specific context there. Clay ceramics, right? You have this driven by student choice and interest. And so I imagine that they were in a tough spot where they had somebody who either wanted it or that's their one like free period. And so they put them in. Here's a placeholder. I believe this do not adjust is used for students that they're working with around attendance, who, for example, have not shown up this year, but are not dropped from the roll as they're doing attendance intervention to figure out if they moved, went somewhere else, that kind of thing. This is an approved block off. So either a study hall or free period. That's what you see there, those larger classes. So share this again, not, I was a high school teacher too. I was a high school principal. Not to say that these are wrong. That variability you would expect to see, especially at schools where there's more choice and options. And having choice and options is really good when we think about having students be engaged and want to go to high school, right? That if they can choose a class that they're really interested in, that's great. We want that to happen. And that trade-off exists.
We have about 15 minutes left. Superintendent, I was wondering if you could just show us the screen for Portland High School also, just to quickly scan through.
Yep. So these are going to be their path students. So don't look at those classes and be like, what's going on? That's that, right? You see the same thing, late arrival, an early release, or senior privilege that are higher. And then when we look at class sizes, we see a range again. Like AP Lit in 12th grade, 16, 16, 17, college prep 20. You go down to like ocean science and forensics. That's like a good example of where if you wanted to, you could have something called like 12th grade science and everybody takes physics. And you could probably have one fewer section. And I think it's great that our students have choice, and our teachers have some choice about teaching something that they're interested in, right? Both super valuable, super important. In case you were wondering, they do have honors Latin poetry there.
23 students, that's a lot. There was one other thing I know that was really helpful that I looked at was when you did, I know you showed us just changing the kindergarten grade level, but if we did change K through 3 to 16 or something like that, how big of a financial impact that would be really helpful to see.
Yeah, of course. And I'm flipping between screens, so I'm trying to figure out what you can see still. Can you see the calculator right now?
Yes. Yep.
All right, so let's just make them all 16. For what grade do you want me to end at?
Let's do fifth. Why not? Just to see.
All right. Doing that, um, add 66 teachers, right around $6.7 million once you factor in benefits, et cetera.
Okay.
There's a space issue that comes with this, but I realize we're doing it for illustration purposes.
Yep.
And then if you looked over here, you could see that in every case, it really lowers class size, except at East End and at Talbot in those specific grades where just number wise, just happens to be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Great. Board Chair Lins.
Yeah, I'm not sure when we'll get to this point, but it seems like when we visited this before as a board, we've really looked at the elementary classes and the research around like what point you have to get to really make an impact. And then like only thinking about like putting more elementary teachers in those buildings. And it sounds like that there might be other ways to think about this in terms of like potentially collapsing some classes at the higher ends of our grades to have bigger limits that then would like potentially free up some staffing there that then could be moved, or adding additional, like we've done with the literacy ed techs, or additional staff into classes, as opposed to having um, a whole nother class. And so I'm like wondering like how anybody on this call is like thinking about how do we compare those different methods. I think, I just want to say this out loud again, like a $6.7 million is like close to 6% in increase on our budget. And that's just this. That doesn't account for any cost of living or inflation or anything else. So I'm just like, I just am curious like what the process is for like comparing different paths, I guess. And if
Can
we
I
don't know yet, that's okay too, but I'm just curious.
can I speak to that slightly and propose a potential path? Because I've been in these conversations a bunch. So for folks who weren't on the board, I wasn't here, but I don't know, Sarah, if you were here at the time, Mickey, you were here when the class size discussion came up before, right? The research shows that you have to go and make some pretty significant changes to have it result in different outcomes, right? It's not changing the class size by one or two.
Right. And just to be clear, to make student outcomes different.
Yeah, student outcomes.
Yeah.
Yeah. There could be differences around like teacher quality of life. That's a good point. And that the research shows that it's particular at early grades, not at later grades. And so the example that was implemented this year was adding ed techs to our Title I classrooms in kindergarten, and to do that so that there was 1 to 2 to support with behavior at the very beginning of the year and then literacy. That came about from a request from our assistant superintendent for elementary schools and her conversations with school leaders about what would have the most impact. And so my own recommendation would be that we take this question to our elementary network team and our school leaders and say, and they can get it from their teachers as well, is to say what would be most impactful. And if we were limited in how many arrows we can shoot, where would it be most important to do that? And we pose that question to them. And then one of the things we didn't do with the ed techs, but I would suggest that we do, is that we say, great, let's take these ed techs, let's have this kindergarten program, and let's run it for 2 years. And then let's look at our literacy results in kindergarten and in first grade and see if it had an impact. And if it did, we'll say value add. And if it didn't, we would say that we need to consider something different. But that would be my suggestion, is that we get that feedback from our leaders. We can engage them with some literature to help them think about it. And then we set a measurable goal. So we don't just end up with like 5 pilots that go on forever, but we have something that's time bound that we know that's in the budget for a couple of years, and then we revisit. That would be my own suggestion.
I have a follow-up question to that. Some of the staff that spoke tonight were talking about the pilot program, how we have it just in Title I schools, if we could do certain things in certain schools that have higher need. And my question was, um, how would this work from a staffing perspective year to year? Would we just be reevaluating demographics at every school, or when it seems like a school is oversaturated with too many staff? I don't know. I mean, like just thinking about changing demographics within the city. If you had any thoughts on that.
I mean, I would say the same thing, right? Which I don't think there's big swings from what the schools are that are ranked for socioeconomically disadvantaged. Let's just take that, right? It seems to be that it's either East End or Reiki that are number 1 and number 2. And then I think it's Talbot and then Rowe. And that order is pretty consistent. And that's the same way that Title I funding happens.
Mm-hmm.
So my suggestion would be that we don't just use Title I funding for this, but that it's also part of our local way of thinking about it. And so we would say that any grade that is above X% low income or X% multilingual, that we would add an ed tech or we would adjust class size as a way to do it. And so we would add that factor so that it thinks about that red and green chart more nuanced than simply a division exercise. And then I think the piece that this doesn't address, and I'm not quite sure how to address it in a systematic way, is that question of the 4th grade, right? So every school I talk to in our listening sessions with schools this year has that grade that they talk about, where if they just had one more teacher for that grade, it would feel different. Right? It's, actually I can think about it. One at Reiki that they named, one at Talbot, one at Rowe, they've all come up. And so that's the piece that the class size and having the factor for multilingual or low income would not capture. But perhaps there's some way without adding staff to give leaders discretion to use a staff member or 2 in a different manner that would allow that to get accomplished.
Great. This was a great kickoff to this discussion. That spreadsheet is very helpful. It's a very helpful tool. So you said that everyone can have access to that? Everyone that's on the board, is it accessible to the public? Just if people want to manipulate it and not mess up anything. How does that happen?
So I'm just trying to look and see what's on Diligent. I think all of it's publicly available.
Right before the meeting, I just clicked in on things
Yeah.
But I guess my access I don't know, might be different. So
Which one, Angela, which one? Oh, because you're saying you were able to do that all, but you may have
yeah, I
different.
was able to do it from the agenda.
Okay. I think they're all available.
Wonderful. Well, we're nearing the end of our time, and I think I'm going to go ahead and, yep. Vice Chair Bondo, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just have thank you, Superintendent, for the presentation. I just want a clarification question to you, Chair. Lena, on the what we want to achieve here on the new policy for the class size, when I look at all the different aspects of different schools and grade and level and everything, I try to see what we try to achieve here in our policy. Was
That's a great
what
question.
we
I
want
think
to have.
it's, yeah, I think
Yes.
it's touching on what Superintendent Scallon said with his idea to put this to the building leaders is that, we want the staff to feel supported. We don't want them to feel like they're drowning, that they can't manage behaviors, that the situation in their classrooms is untenable. So finding a way to create a space where the teachers feel supported enough that they can address the needs of all of the students that are in their class. So whatever the demographic is in their class, they feel that they have the support. And so whether it's, the ratio of their themselves to the students in the class, or if they have an ed tech that's supporting them or whatever it is, and we don't have an answer to that, but I think the guide is that the staff feel that they can do their jobs and feel supported. So I don't know if that specifically answers the question, but
A little bit because it's still I still get confused when the way we going the direction we going. I really get it on the support of the teachers. That was all the time my advocacy to make sure then they have a structure. But when I look at that, then we don't. When I look at also what the PAE is allowing, I think is I don't know the superintendent. I think it's 20, 21 the ratio in the classroom under the PAE contract.
I think it's 30.
There, there's an appendix of guidelines,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually not a contractual requirement.
Oh,
And so
okay.
I don't remember what it is, but it's higher
Mhm.
than what our class size guidelines are that we
Right.
use.
Okay. So maybe more we going in depth, I will catch up because my brain is still not going because I've been doing those class sets for years and all the time it's coming back around the budget season while we see the ratio by teachers and we see also how we allocated those funding to support some of the Title 9 class schools or Title 1. So it's everything combined together. So I just want to get a sense what the policy is going to support. So maybe it's too early for now. So more we go into the conversation, I will see the purpose of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Rondo. I would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Do I have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bondo. All in favor, please show your hands. Okay, great. We are now adjourned at 7:26 p.m. Thank you.